Hello, today we're going to be learning about kites and trapezoids, and by the end we should say I can use definitions of properties of quadrilaterals to find missing sides and angles. So by the end of the day we'll be able to look at a kite like this and find the missing angles. We'll be able to look at this trapezoid and find the missing side lengths and angles. Alright, for a kite is, um, the definition of a kite is two consecutive congruent angles, two sets. So these two are going to be congruent, and those two are going to be congruent. Now, your vertex angles are angles A and angle C, where your non-vertex angles are angle D and angle B. Vertex is where just the two congruent sides meet. So if we keep rolling on this, we could take some time and measure out all of these things if we were in class. But right now, we're not going to take the time. We're just going to jump right to the properties. The first property that you'll notice is the diagonals of a kite are perpendicular. Then you'll notice that the diagonal connecting the vertex angles of a kite is the perpendicular bisector of the other diagonal. And the non-vertex angles of a kite are congruent. And the vertex angles are bisected by a diagonal. So if, I'll just go back to this previous one and show you what that all means. Now, the diagonals are perpendicular. That means they cross 90 degrees. The fact that they're a perpendicular bisector, that means these two are congruent. The third one says that the non-vertex angles are congruent. So this angle is going to be congruent to this angle. And the last one says that the vertex angles are angle bisectors are bisected by the diagonal. So all of these markings represent everything that was on the previous one. So knowing those, we're going to do some problems. They start easy and get a little tougher. If BD is 10, that means each of these is going to be 5. So the measure of BE is 5. Easy peasy. If we have these, we want to find the measure of x and y. And these use the property that this is the angle bisector. So if you know that, those are 50s, those are 30s. Add these up and you get 80. Subtract from 180, and each of these will be 100. Next one's a little bit more difficult. Here we have to see that these are perpendicular bisectors, so that crosses at 90 degrees. So we add these two and subtract from 180 to get us to 56. These two are the same because this is the angle bisector, so this is 56. That's 90, so add those, subtract from 180, and you'll get back to 34. So these two triangles we can see are congruent. Now these have no effect on these angles down here. So if I want to find D, I have to use the angle bisector rule, and then see that this is again 90 degrees. Add them up, subtract from 180, and I would say that this one is 68. All right, now we have our A, B, C, and D, and we're off to the next category, which is a trapezoid. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly one set of parallel lines. So we have our two parallel lines here. Now, if this is the base, our base angles would be here and here. These are the base angles. Could draw a line better. But we could also say the top is the base, and those two are the base angles as well. Now, consecutive angles in a trapezoid. Those are two angles in a row. If I would just say continue this a little bit this way, continue this way, like that. Consecutive angles are these two. And these two, hopefully you remember that these two are called consecutive interior angles, and consecutive interior angles are always supplementary. And there we go. So that's going to help us out. But we also have to draw something called a isosceles trapezoid. And remember, isosceles triangles have two sides that are congruent. And in an isosceles triangle, they can be any side that's congruent. However, in an isosceles trapezoid, they have to be the non-parallel sides. Now, the things that are different about an isosceles trapezoid, there are two properties. One is the base angles in an isosceles trapezoid are going to be congruent. So these two are congruent. That also means these two are going to be congruent. Now the diagonals of an isosceles trapezoid are always going to be congruent as well. Alright, now we'll keep moving with some problems. Find the degree measure of each of these angles. Since these two add up to 180, 180 minus that would be 118. 180 minus 70 is 110. In this situation, we have an isosceles triangles. So these two are each going to be 65. Subtract from 180, and this would be 115, and this would be 115. The next one, a segment connecting the midpoints of two non-parallel sides. So if I find the midpoint here and the midpoint here, that is called a midsegment. I didn't write that very well, but midsegment. And now if I connect them, there's our midsegment. Now, our midsegment, when we draw it, is always going to be parallel to the bases. And it's equal in length to the average of the two bases. So what we have to do is, if I want to find m, I take b1 plus b2 and divide it by 2. We're just finding the average of two numbers. So if I want to find the value for x, what I do is I take 6 plus 10 divided by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. There we go, 8. Here, 34 plus 52 divided by 2. What's that? 88 divided by 2. 86 divided by 2. So 43. Had to recheck my math. Now these two, one thing I wanted you to see here is the distance between 6 and 8 is 2. Between 8 and 10 is 2. So 8 is in the middle of those. So if 34 is in the middle of 48 and another number, we can know that this distance is 14. So this distance also has to be 14. So 34 minus 14 would give us 20 centimeters. If we kept that going, the distance between 22 and 28 is 6. So the distance here is also 6, which would be 14. So now all we have to do is the final two problems. Now in kite, non-vertex angles are congruent, so 3x has to equal to 84. And so if I take 84 divided by 3, x is just going to be 28. Now in order to find y, I have to add up all of these angles. So I have 84 plus 84 plus 122 and subtract that from 360, and y is going to be 70 degrees. Now on this side, I have 101, so C is going to be 101 because those are called corresponding angles, because this midsegment and the two parallel sides will all be parallel. And similarly, if this is 68, A is also 68. And B, if this is a trapezoid, these two will be supplementary, so 180 minus 68 will give us 112. So let's fill out, we have 68, 112, and 101. Now to find D, now we just add them up and divide by 2 to find the average. So that's 24 divided by 2, which is 12. All right, now we're done with the lesson. So rate your level of understanding between 0 and 5, and you're ready to do the homework.